This is Sunday Night Live. The Humanity First movement is alive and well. We're excited to share with you a couple updates and have an AMA with Nate McMurray, who's going to be joining us. All right. So everyone, once again, we're here to gather together and get inspired for another week in the movement. A little bit of explanation of who the Humanity First movement is for our newcomers. Our organization came out of the volunteer leaders during the Yang 2020 campaign. And we really focus on local organizing. We think there's a lot of power in small groups focusing on local politics in order to get the policies we care about passed. This is the revolution of reason. So if you are new here and you want to know how to get more engaged, please introduce yourself in the chat, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook or in our Zoom chat. We will connect you with folks in your state or local area so you can start organizing. And we'll also onboard you to explore our working groups, our different departments in the Humanity First movement. Right now, we're in the middle of what Humanity Forward has called our Sprint to the Election plan. So we're really focusing on helping out our endorsed candidates. But the Humanity First movement is focused on long-term movement building. So there's a lot of work to do beyond simply phone banking and text banking, even though that's our bread and butter of what we do to move the country forward. So we're glad to have you here. We also really believe in community engagement. We like to watch movies together and hang out and share ideas. Really, it's all about creating that solid community that you can trust in, that you can feel like you have a lot of value with your team members, and we focus on improving our professional skills and making the biggest impact we can for our country. So to cover a little bit of the specifics, though, of how we see ourselves, the Humanity First movement has a vision for a future where a data-driven government prioritizes intrinsic human value and quality of life. Our mission is to amplify the voice of the people, to put integrity and humanity first. We champion policies that value human well-being over profit and tackle economic inequity at its roots, creating opportunities for communities to thrive. We engage elected officials, we advance candidates, and we support community leaders by galvanizing a broad coalition and mobilizing a grassroots movement. So now that you know a little bit about us, just to show you our code here, the Humanity First movement values. These are the same values that we followed during the Yang 2020 campaign, and it continues to unite us with all of the different movements and groups that were inspired by Andrew Yang's presidential campaign. So those values are humanity first, and integrity and transparency, abundance, grace and forgiveness, not left or right, but forward, and math, make America think harder. While we're here at this point, we've all had a lot of experiences, a lot of us that have been involved from the beginning in the Yang campaign and beyond. We've had a lot of experiences with doing outreach and engaging with our neighbors and people who don't really have much experience in politics. And so for a lot of us, we're still growing, we're still learning about how to be the most effective activists possible. I just wanted to open the floor to anyone if they had a story about when one of these values became useful to them to guide their behavior. But anyone like to share a personal story? While we wait for people to think about that, please raise your hand or mention in the comments if you want to talk about it. I just want to talk a little bit about our value of abundance. During the campaign, we used abundance in a lot of ways to explain why we support universal basic income. We believe that if someone gets something, then that doesn't necessarily mean that you're losing out. Life isn't a zero-sum game. In a lot of cases, if we can respect other people and see that there's an abundance of resources out there, an abundance of attention, an abundance of passion, it really helps us know when not to get competitive, when not to get jealous. And to be honest, there's a lot of groups out there that are trying to do what the Humanity First movement is doing, and we applaud all of their activities, and we want to work with them in a large coalition. And I really think this is something that a lot of other movements haven't utilized very well, this sense of abundance, and I think it can guide us to build a really large, big tent movement that can push our policies over the finish line. Does anyone else have a short story, personal story, or just any thoughts about the values that they want to share?
I guess I can talk a little bit about not left or not right. I think that, but forward. I think that a lot of that value has helped me have a better understanding of politics. So like, I don't necessarily agree with, everyone's political opinion or where they're coming from, but I think that when I'm having discussions, because they are from a pretty broad political spectrum, because we did a lot of campaigning during the campaign and afterwards to people across the political spectrum, I feel like it's helped me to have a better understanding for how to communicate with lots of different people in a way that is valuable for us to win, right? Because one of the things that's important, one of the things I think that we all recognize, but it doesn't always feel like it, is that most Americans agree on a lot of different policies, and we don't, but online or through political parties, it seems quite divisive. And when you do get perspectives or people in different groups from across the political spectrum, you can see where some of those similarities are and what some of those overlapping goals are, and then try to figure out how to work towards them. And that's been pretty positive about like why I've been in this organization and on this campaign. So
thanks, Gray. That was perfect. Yeah, I appreciate that. Would anyone else like to share some comments?
Well, I could talk a little bit about integrity. When I see integrity and transparency, it takes me back to my time in the military, but it truly applies to all we do. It's taking responsibility, particularly when you mess up, particularly when you make a mistake, just standing up to it. And, over my time, what I've found is, it's hard at the moment, but when you do it, you get a lot of respect. Over time, people really respect you just for having integrity, not flip-flopping, but being able to say, if you make a mistake, being able to own up to it.
Absolutely. Hey, I love that one. It is hard. It is hard to admit fault. But I think that especially in these movements where we all have to be very public about our activism, even if you're not online, you're reaching out to neighbors and friends and family about politics, which, is hard to do sometimes. If you can demonstrate integrity, and changing your views when you're proven wrong. And it's just inspiring to everyone else. Everyone wants to be part of that kind of team where people own up to their mistakes and want to improve. So yeah, that's critical.
Yeah.
Angelo, I think you had a quick comment.
Yeah, so I've got a story of humanity first where I actually had helped out this one female friend of mine. She had gotten sick at the club, and it was a no re-entry place. I actually went outside and stood guard over her during the entire concert, which regrettably the singer passed away shortly after that. But to me, saving a person's life and making sure that they're okay and healthy and protected, especially when they're in a vulnerable state, is the most important thing. So humanity first, making sure that, our fellow humans are taken care of.
Yeah.
You're muted, Brandon.
Brendan, you're muted.
Whoops. Hey, I just wanted to say that's excellent, Angelo. That was a really good point about humanity first. It really is what brings us all together, and it helps us persuade people who have a different point of view when they see that we really do care. So yeah, thanks for this short discussion about the Humanity First movement values, and I hope as we go forward we can talk about it more and make it more and more central to our culture in this organization. Jacqueline, we'll get back to you if you don't mind. Just we're trying to stick to a schedule here, but we'll get back to you after the AMA. But I wanted to talk about this, or just let everyone know about the movie night that's coming up this Friday. It's our Rocky Horror Picture Show night, because Halloween is right around the corner. It's a tradition in a lot of places. You're still not going to get me to dress up for one of those, but I know a lot of people get really into it, and there's a lot of fun traditions. But so that should be really fun. It's at 9 p.m. Eastern time and 6 p.m. Pacific time. So keep that in mind. Put it on your calendars. Should be fun. Okay, and just to cover the sprint to the election a little bit more, we are phone banking for Humanity Forward endorsed candidates. We're sending out texts. We're writing letters to editors. These are all really high impact activities. Even 20 minutes a day or an hour to a week over time can make a big difference. And really, it's game time. We have 10 days to go until the election. And every day is, more important than ever as we get some of these undecided voters to make up their minds. And so we're also looking for phone bank captains. So if you don't want to call people directly, it's still really useful to be an organizer, to host calls with other phone bankers, give them the information they need to be successful. So if you're more of an introvert, we could still really use you as a phone bank captain. We have this link here, volunteers.movehumanityforward.com, that you can access to sign up to be a phone bank captain. We're also looking for graphic designers and people to do data entry. Everything that you can do helps this movement. So it's going to take a little bit from all of us. And also check out this mobilize.us page to sign up for the highest priority phone bank shifts. Yeah, and if you want to get started tonight, well, California Yang Gang is hosting an event with Humanity Forward. It's called Humanity Calls for California. They have some excellent candidates in California. I really feel like the blue wave or the progressive wave, or whatever you want to call it, is going to sweep California stronger than we've seen in many years. So we're really excited for the California Yang Gang to pull off some big wins. Personally, I've talked a little bit with David Kim, and man, that guy, he's lightning in a bottle. You don't see candidates like David too often. And Christy and Bryn and Liam are also fantastic leaders that could really use some extra volunteers. A volunteer who's willing to phone bank consistently for a candidate is worth their weight in gold. So if this sounds interesting to you, this event is going to start right after Sunday Night Live. And we got a link in there if you could share it in the chat, Megan, to register for this. But yeah, we'll probably see some people leaving at 6:30 to go join this. So head on over. Okay, yeah, and for those of you that want to get more engaged, well, this is your moment here to record some of these links. If you want to find our meetings for our departments, we got a link there to access the Humanity First Movement calendar. We also have a calendar just for community events to have fun and get to know each other. If you access our website at hfmovement.org, on the front page, there is a map with all 50 states. You can click on your state and automatically be sent to that state chapter's website. Or if there's not a state chapter organized, you can sign up on a form so that we can contact you and get things moving so we can get those chapters organized. And we got also a link here to the Humanity Forward Rapid Response Slack, which is all aimed at phone banking, text banking, writing letters to the editor. You can learn more about HFM and HFRR following that link about our structure. And yeah, we'd love to see you later on, if not this week, next week, or whenever you have time. We hope to meet with you and share more of our knowledge about this movement later on in our working group meetings. So we'll see you there. All right, now introducing Nate McMurray. He is here in our room, ready for an AMA. We're privileged to have you here. You know, a lot of us are just barely starting to learn about you, Nate McMurray, and your campaign. And we'd love this for you to regard this as a safe space to talk about anything that you like to inspire us and our members to get more involved. So welcome, Nate.
Thanks for having me. Should I just give an introduction to start with?
That would be fantastic. Yeah.
So I'm Nate McMurray. I am the NY27 congressional candidate endorsed by the Working Families Party and the Democratic Party. I grew up here. I grew up in Niagara County, just by Niagara Falls. And I don't know if you guys, is anybody familiar with this part of the world?
Yes, sir.
Niagara County.
Yep.
I saw Niagara Falls once. Well, was great.
Thank you for visiting. I grew up here. I am one of seven. I was raised by my mom, by herself. My father passed away when I was 4. And she raised 7 children by herself, which was a struggle. And we did it because of Social Security survival benefits of my father. I worked my way up. I started at community college because it was a lot cheaper. And I went to law school. I was a Fulbright scholar. I received a scholarship to study at Tsinghua University in China. Then I went into corporate law because I needed to pay back some student loan debts. And it was an era where you could still kind of do that. And I went to, I spent almost 20 years in Asia, working for various companies. Wanted to come back home the whole time. I wanted to be back part of Western New York. And I'm a guy who grew up very humbly in Niagara County, which is very rural. And I always longed to be back home. So I came back home a few years ago, and kind of out of a fluke, I live in a very Republican area, kind of what you would call Trump country. But I ran for town supervisor in my hometown, and I won by 2 votes. And I thought that'd be the end of it. I had a very good time as town supervisor. We got a lot done, and you can look at what I believe in by what I got done as town supervisor. We became almost carbon neutral from solar projects. We built infrastructure. We opened up old buildings. I got a lot done. I am very, very proud of my record as town supervisor. But there was a guy named Chris Collins, you might remember. In 2018, there wasn't a big fight against him. He was a powerful person at the time. And I thought, well, someone needs to fight Chris Collins. Now, you may remember, because he just went to jail a week ago for insider trading. He already had a lot of ethical problems at the time. But I said, I'm going to run against Chris Collins. I ran against Chris Collins. And it's a district that 538 said if we ran it 100 times, the chance of a Democrat winning was one time. But I still said I'm going to run. And we came within 0.37% of winning in 2018 with zero help from the Democratic Party, I should add. But he was convicted. He went to jail. And I said, I'm going to run again to try to take the seat. This time I'm running against, boy, I don't even know if I want to get into this. I'll get into it. I'm running against the company I used to work for, the son of the heir of the company, a billionaire who's a big Trump supporter. I didn't know that when I worked for them. He's running against me. He's actually the sitting congressman now. And it's kind of a David versus Goliath story, but it's a great story because we had the special election a couple months ago. And again, no one thought I had a chance. We had no national support. And I came within 5 points in the reddest district in the country, or at least in Northeast or New York State, a district where no Democrat has ever come even close to what I've done twice. So we've had more Republicans and independents vote for me than anybody else in the country over the last 2 cycles. Anybody. We've had the biggest partisan swing for a first-time candidate. And in the special, everyone said I was going to get killed by this billionaire, and we still almost won. So where are we right now? We are neck and neck in the polls. And it's kind of brutal because it's hard to get attention in this cycle with Trump and everything else. But I do want to say, so you guys feel comfortable with the person you're supporting, I have never sold out, ever, not even a small amount. I fought for things that would have helped the family I grew up in. I'm a Medicare for All supporter. I'm a UBI supporter. I'm a progressive candidate, for lack of a better term. And I don't do that because it's difficult to do that here. I've been a very harsh critic of Trump. The Nation did an article I'm very proud about last year saying the man who wants to un-Trump upstate. It's one of the only pieces of national coverage we got that I was proud of. And it's true. We've done everything in our power to fight Trump. And Trump won this district by 30 points. So the fact that we're coming so close is amazing. Because I think this district, and I'll end with this comment. I really think a lot of Trump's talking points, populist talking points, were correct. Not the racism, obviously. I mean, we deny that every single chance we get. We have to fight against it, and we have. But look at the trade deals have devastated upstate New York. They've killed it. There has been a forgotten people in this part of the country. And a lot of people took a Hail Mary and said, we're going to help. We're going to go with Trump. They also believed in Bernie to a large extent. And I think if Joe Biden wins, and I hope he does win, we will use that as an opportunity to correct some of the errors of the Democratic Party. And if I win, I can promise you I'll be an active voice in that regard. I think we have to start remembering poor people. And I use that word because I grew up poor here too. People who really don't have a chance in modern America. And I will do that in every way that I can, from student loan reductions to healthcare for every single citizen to UBI, which I think can really change the course of our country. And that's who I am. And it's been difficult. Trump has fought against me himself. He had a town hall against me in a special election because we were going to win. And he came in and he did this big town hall, and it was brutal. He said that I was somehow responsible for free trade deals and I sent millions of jobs to China. He just made stuff up. I'm an unemployed dad with 2 kids, but somehow I was responsible for all the woes of America. Donnie Jr. has attacked me. Kimberly Guilfoyle has attacked me. Steve Bannon came here and did a rally against me. But we're still standing. For some reason, we have all these people trying to kill us, but the National Party doesn't seem to care. And we're still this close. And the reason why I say that is your attention to the race can make a huge difference. And we really hope, we're really grateful that you're paying attention. We're really grateful that you're giving us this opportunity to talk to you. And we're hopeful that in 9 days, we're going to have one of the biggest upsets in the country. And we proved twice that it's completely possible. And with that, I'll be happy to take whatever question you might have.
Thanks so much for explaining all that for our viewers. And I just got to applaud you for fighting the good fight against corruption in government. You really seem like a candidate of integrity. And, just so you know a little bit more about the Yang Gang and Humanity First movement, we were struggling for 2 years against a media blackout. And we saw so much on social media, on mainstream news media, just inaccuracies about Andrew Yang and just trying to spin him in such a negative light, or just not mention him at all. And so you're in good company. We all see ourselves as champions of the truth and fighting against the powers that be here, and changing our political parties for the better. So if anyone has a question, you can raise your hand in the chat or write out your question, and we'll come back around to you.
In that regard, I want to say Andrew is one of the only people who did reach out to me. And he made a video for my kids, and it was a big shot in the arm. And I think, like, what he did, you guys were ahead of it more than me. I didn't know who he was until he reached out to me before I kind of even knew who he was. And I'll say this about him, or his team did rather. I'll say this about him. He changed the Democratic Party for the good. The fact that we can talk about UBI, and that's just one of the issues, but that we can talk about UBI and the future of work in a way that doesn't seem like it's radical or crazy. He deserves all the credit in the world. And I'm proud of everybody on this call that helped make that part of our national dialogue. And I think it's an important dialogue going forward. Where I sit right now around this area, I can show you if you were here, there's 10 locations, not 10, there's probably 50 locations that used to be steel mills or factories of various different forms. I mean, my ancestors came here to work in a place called Buffalo Bolt. The street over here is called Buffalo Bolt, but there's no Buffalo Bolt. It's been gone for 100 years. And it's not in China, it's not in Mexico, it just doesn't exist anymore. So the fact we really have to talk about the future of work and what it looks like. And I'm grateful to all of you and to Andrew Yang for making that possible.
Thanks so much, Nate. And just to start off our AMA, I'd love to shoot you maybe a question. I'm guessing maybe you haven't heard this one too often. So I noticed you're an Eagle Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout as well. So, I know a bit about scouting culture and how important it was when I was growing up to give me certain values and teach me practical skills to be part of a team. And you can, fixing our economy is one thing, but also there's a social element that I think we need to do a lot of work in building up, civic groups and communities around our country that can start tackling problems within politics and outside of politics. For some of us, we've read this book, Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam, that shows that really a few decades ago, we had so many more groups like the scouting program that was just bringing people together. And I was wondering if you could talk a bit about your experience as a scout and maybe how we can try to get people more interested in activism, volunteering, and all of these important elements of the good society.
Boy, I got a lot of thoughts. It's a great question, by the way, a wonderful question, because I think if you look at a lot of these civic groups, they're dead. And the average age is in their 70s or even 80s. I mean, there's nothing left. Part of the problem is they've been taken over by radicals. I hate to say that, but you know what I'm talking about. I was a Boy Scout, and part of the Boy Scout, the Boy Scout, listen, I gained so much from scouting, including almost a spiritual appreciation for the outdoors. I mean, I had, if there's any spiritual experiences in my life, they were probably up in Canada kayaking and looking at the stars as a scout, and just appreciation for the wonder and grandeur of the universe and planet Earth. But scouting was also, when I was a scout as a kid, there was a lot of great things about it. We could talk about it all day, but I think the part that doesn't get talked about enough is the radicalization that's part of it. And I mean, maybe I don't want to be offensive to you. Obviously, I'm proud of an Eagle Scout. I put in everything I do. But I think the reason why a lot of people have started to move away from some of those organizations is because they teach things like, radical Second Amendment ideology, and I mean, kind of like a muted version of fascism. And I remember even as a child thinking, what they're teaching me doesn't seem to jive with what's in the Citizen in the Community book that they gave me. And the reason why I bring this up is it's even more important for us people who have different ideas to be involved in these organizations so that children in our community have a different perspective. Because if you go to the Rotary Club or you go to the Lions Club, you go to these organizations, it's very right wing. And it doesn't have to be that way. We have to create, I think, new organizations to challenge some of the ideology coming out of these organizations. But also we have to be involved in the existing organizations that can be saved. And clearly the Boy Scouts has a lot of wonderful aspects, but it needs to be either there needs to be a counter movement or it needs to be revitalized. And I think that everyone on this call here, you're on the call because you're searching for a source of community and connection, including me. I mean, that's really the reason why I ran for town supervisor in my small town. I wanted to be part of my community. And I don't want to get too esoteric here, but if you bear with me for a second, I'm reading Salem's Lot right now, the Stephen King novel. Every single year around this time of year, I read a Halloween ebook, and I really like Stephen King. And I didn't like Stephen King as a child, but I like him now. And Salem's Lot is essentially a story about Dracula coming to a small town and taking over the small town. And it's a metaphor for, I think, it doesn't say this explicitly, but this is what I get from it, that capitalism and extreme capitalism has gutted our communities because we don't have that opportunity to bowl together. We look at each other as it's a dog-eat-dog world where we don't have a community, we don't serve each other, we don't find opportunities to interact with each other, and we're vampires to each other. And as a result, as you can see in small towns across upstate New York, they're abandoned, they're hollowed out because this greed is good mentality in America, and the government has been cut till it's unable to cure a lot of the problems that we needed to cure, and we're all out to get each other. But we can't live like that. And if you think about John Winthrop, when he first came to the United States, the Pilgrims, the first prayer said by immigrants to this country was that we are a city on the hill and we will suffer together and we will bear each other's burdens. And that is the model I want to work for if I'm in office, a model where we remember that we're in this together. And I think at this time of pandemic, we need to be tied to each other more than ever. And scouting and organizations like scouting, when done right, can absolutely bind us together in a way where we look at each other as friends and neighbors and really family. And I think that's an America I want to work for. I know it's a very long-winded answer, but long story short, Boy Scouts was a great opportunity for me. And I'm sad that the Boy Scouts have been eroded to the point where they are eroded to. And I'm sad that many other organizations like that have been eroded. And I strongly believe everybody on this call and everybody in America has to take time out of their busy schedules and their busy lives to get involved in these secular organizations that make our community tight and bound together.
Thanks so much. Those are some wise words, Nate. Thanks for answering that. Question from Gray now.
Hey Nate, thanks so much for talking and your answer about community programs and how we use them and why they're essential to how we continue to build forward. I really, really liked and appreciated. I saw you were endorsed by the Working Families Party, and you're in a super red district. One of the things that I guess I have some insight, but I want to hear your answer on this. A lot of working families, a lot of rural communities and poor communities outside of like urban sectors tend to be pretty Republican, even though the Republican Party as it stands now and some of its libertarian ideals don't really support the progress for poor and working families. What is your insight on, why they tend to lean that way, and how do we as people who are trying to be progressive, people who are trying to work forward and invest in each other together, how do we take some of that like in a way that is productive?
So I think neoliberalism, whatever you want to call it, the new form of the Democratic Party over the last 40 years is culpable. And if you look at the positions of, I mean, I don't want to, you guys can be mad at me, but you asked me for my answer. And if people here in NYU 27 know, I always speak from my heart. There's a lot of good things that people like Bill Clinton did, but they also forgot about working people in this part of the world. And if you come to NY27, it looks like a Norman Rockwell painting that's been abandoned for 70 years. And when you do things like cut the social safety net, and when you do things like talk about welfare queens, when you do things like continue to give away corporate welfare but never do anything to help working people, they start to leave the party. And that's what happened here. And racism is certainly part of it. And what people like Donald Trump did is open racism to push them out of it. But Trump doesn't even represent traditional conservatism. He's not a free trade guy. He's not anything. He's a populist. If you look at traditional conservative ideals, they're much more similar to people like Bill Clinton than they are to Donald Trump. I mean, there's some social issues that obviously that Bill Clinton is more closely related to the modern, to people on this call than Trump is. But even Trump was lukewarm about issues like choice or abortion not too long ago. I think what Trump did, and I think that everyone on the left side of the aisle, because I think that Joe Biden is going to win, has to be well aware of, is that they're going to outflank us. People talk about the end of the Republican Party. I don't know. I think if Biden is not able to address the needs of working people, because Trump talked about he didn't do it, but he talked very much about finding a way to give healthcare to every single American. When Joe Biden seems afraid to say that. And people like, what's his name? Buttigieg, he's afraid to say that. And I think that we have to really fight, because I think there's still a little danger, even if Trump loses, of someone like Tucker Carlson rising and outflanking the left on some type of popular movement that addresses the needs of working people in this part of the world. And so I think it's a real danger. And Joe Biden and the leadership has to, if they don't immediately start to reach out to this part of the country, I think that Trumpism, for lack of a better term, is going to be with us for decades to come. And if it's tied to entitlements that actually make people's lives better, it may also allow a lot of people to justify hatred and racism. Because when I grew up here, I never saw the Confederate flag. I didn't see it. In my neighborhood right now where I'm sitting, I saw there's probably 20 Confederate flags. And I think that's the flag of desperation. It's the flag of racism and hate, but it's also a flag of desperation. And in this part of the country, people don't have, like, if I took you to some houses up here, and some of you may know, I have never seen this type of poverty anywhere in the world. And I literally mean that. I'm talking absolute poverty and drug use and just sadness and desperation. And if we don't start to address these concerns in a country where people like Jeff Bezos, here, let me pause for a second. The current tax system wasn't just Ronald Reagan. You know, that we've had a lot of Democrats in office. And currently 400 people own 60% more wealth than the 60% of Americans. So that means that 400 people, if we tax 5% of their wealth, I read this the other day, we could end poverty in America. If we tax 5% of their wealth, we could end student loan debt. 5% of their wealth, we could create drinkable water for the entire world. So we have this completely chaotic system where so many people are left out, and we continue to hope that if we pile more and more money in the hands of people like Jeffrey Bezos and Trump, that it's going to somehow solve our problems magically. And at the same time, let me just say, I'll move on to the next question after this. I'm sorry to be so long-winded. I got 9 days left. I've been running for 1,000 days. If you look at what's happening in the country today, and if you look at where we are in the country today, it's really an extreme situation where so many people have so little hope. And so to your question, why is it so red? I don't think it's red. I think these people would be so willing to embrace others if they felt they had a piece of the pie themselves. And I know that's like, we always undermine economic anxiety, but economic anxiety is real. And we would be it's very dangerous when we start to dismiss that. And I hope that a Joe Biden administration does not dismiss that and starts to address the concerns of the people here.
Thanks for the question, Gray. Paige, you're up next.
Yeah, so I live down in Brooklyn, so I'm in New York. Exciting to hear that you're also running in New York, even though it's not my district. But my question is about the recent, so, we took the census and they're going to use that data to redistrict all of New York, including the congressional districts. And I'm curious if you have a plan for once you're in office to help support like a nonpartisan commission to help draw those new districts so that people who are in office don't just end up drawing the districts for themselves in the best possible way and leaving us with horrible gerrymandered districts for the foreseeable decade. Do you have any plans for that?
I'm with you. And listen, I believe in one New York, and I'm proud to be connected to downstate. And I think people up here try to vilify downstate. When the pandemic first hit, there was this whole backlash of giving ventilators to downstate. And I'm proud to say I'm the only well-known politician in Western New York who said we have to give the ventilators. And I'm proud of the support I have from downstate, and I'm proud to visit downstate. And I just want to say that to you. But to your thoughts, redistricting is terrible. Gerrymandering in New York State and across the country is terrible. It's so anti-democratic. I would look at anywhere else. If this was even close, I would have won in a landslide twice. So why do I lose? I've lost by just a sliver twice. Because two Democrats want seats where they can never lose in my area. So Congressman Higgins, I'll just say it boldly, he can't lose. He has Buffalo and the Niagara Falls city area where it's completely blue. So, and then on the other side, Congressman Morelli has Rochester. He can never lose. It's impossible for him to lose. And because he has the party infrastructure to help him, there's very difficult to challenge any of these people by in a primary process. Frankly, because I've ran twice here, I might have the opportunity in the future. And people know who I am and they generally believe in me. But if you come to NY27, I have massive support. You go to my Facebook page or my Twitter page. And this is a rural area. Look at the type of people that come to our events. And I still don't win. And I say that because the rigged system hurts Democrats and Republicans. It hurts Republicans because if you're in NY27, a lot of people feel, what's the point of even voting? The Republicans are going to win. So it's anti-democratic. If you're a Democrat, you're like, what's the point of voting? Even if all of us vote, Nate's not going to win anyway. So it suppresses Democratic vote. So it has to change. But the only reason why we usually blame one side, though, the Republicans are responsible. But to get an NY27, it only happens because you have an NY25 and NY26. So what I would say, NY27 is the last district in the state. So NY27 is going to disappear probably if I win or lose. And what we need to do is to bring as much transparency to this process as possible. And that means asking the hard questions or the inconvenient questions of some Democratic leaders who also do not want to be challenged. And I think that I am all for I don't want to be in a district where I can't lose. This NY27 was created by Tom Reynolds. Tom Reynolds is a guy who said, he was one of the most powerful people in Washington. His quote is, I want to create a district where I can vote like a Southern Republican in New York State and never lose. Well, he got it. This is NY27. That's why Chris Collins was elected. That's why Chris Lee was elected. So yes, would I be part of that process? Yes, I'd be part of that process. And somebody who came so close twice that has such regional support, I think my voice would be powerful, win or lose in that process. And I think we all have to be involved in it because it's a corrupt, rigged game on both sides.
Thank you. Good answer.
Thanks, Paige. Next up, Jacqueline.
Sorry, I had to smooch my husband first. Donnie,
Well,
meet Yang Gang. I just wanted to throw in a quick thing there. A lot of the stuff that you mentioned, Mr. McMurray, is because for the past 40 years, this country has collectively failed to tell the truth on the depth, scope, and breadth of absolute poverty. That there has been a growing pool of people who've been permanently pushed out of getting chances for any jobs at all. And they're always dismissed. And this is one of the things that I think the left needs to stop doing is using language that is exclusionary, working people, workist rhetoric, because that dismisses, number one, all the unpaid labor that mostly women have done and are doing, without which this society, nor any other for that matter throughout the world, would never exist at all, right? It's definitely work. But yet somehow when women are doing it, for our own families, it doesn't count as work. And when women are raising their own kids as single moms, like your mom was, it's women are just sitting on their butts, eating bonbons and, quote, popping out babies for the welfare check. And this is some of the rhetoric that has not been challenged for the better part of 45 years. And that is because with neoliberalism, there was an entire machination of a propaganda machine on many fronts that was put into action, starting with the Powell memo in 1970, that basically suppressed the truth about poverty in the United States and the truth about who got chances for jobs, who got left out, and how many jobs there really were to go around for everyone. And when economies recover, such as the crash of '08, and being a Gen Xer, I'm, a little older than a lot of the other people here. I remember, seeing that was the last chance and hope that I would have had of entering or re-entering the workforce as a dislocated, worker, only to not get a chance for a job at all, even after retraining, due to age discrimination. That when jobs finally are created, the time frame has moved down the line such that many people are left to literally age out and utter destitution, and we're not having an honest conversation about that. I'm working on a project known as the American Scorecard with the Humanity First group here, and to unearth and literally exhume and extract this long suppressed, previously hidden data that has been obscured from the public view, including, politicians such as yourself. It was just buried. And in order to solve problems, we actually have to have a solid, firm grip on the scope and breadth of the problem. So we're not putting, we're not administering ibuprofen for a Percocet related pain level, if you get me.
Well, I think what you're saying, it's a couple of your points. I believe that what you're saying is right. There's a lot of work that's not considered or valued the way it should be. And I also think that there's not that many available jobs. The way we guilt people by saying that if you're not getting the job, you're somehow always responsible for the fact that you don't have a job. But when there's not really jobs you can support yourself on, right. There's so much guilt applied to that in our society. Listen, let me just go back to my original story. I've always talked about poverty, always, because poverty was my life. It's how I grew up. And I know a lot of politicians say that, but I mean, I think the most my mother ever made was $14,000 a year. And she worked 3 jobs. She was a janitor. And I used to go and clean with her. And I remember as a woman, the way she was discriminated against. And as a young man, the pain I felt. I remember one time she tried to stop this guy from stealing medicine from we used to clean doctor's offices late at night. And I was like 10 or 11. And she saw one of the doctors stealing probably opioid. I don't know. I was so young. And she confronted him and he said, "Don't you have a urinal to clean?" And I remember how much it stung me as an 11-year-old child to see my mother treated like that, who was everything to me. So I understand, and I also understand that, look, even though I grew up in those conditions, I'm a white male who could put a suit on and play country club pretty easy. And I understand the benefit of that to me as I went on through life. I was able to escape poverty because of my gender and because of my race. So everything you said, there's a lot of truth to it. And I can tell you that I do not have all the answers, but I am someone who's sympathetic to the fact that there needs to be comprehensive change. And we need a society that's more inclusive and where more people have opportunities. And I think I am uniquely sensitive to the issues of poverty in particular because of the way I grew up. And I will always be a champion to eradicate poverty. And I use the term working class because I think for a long time the Democratic Party didn't even want to use the term working class. They thought it was too Marxist or something. But if there's a better term that we can come across, I'm happy to use it. But what I believe in talking about poverty, which is an issue, it's almost a bad word in this country, and it shouldn't be, because so many of us are currently 8 million Americans just slipped into poverty in May. So I will always talk about poverty. And if I go to Washington, I can promise you I'll be a champion against poverty.
I think one of the things we could start is by talking about things in terms of human rights. That's where we really want to get to, that we accept that, and human rights are universal. Human rights is at the fore. But that 8 million, they were just added to an already growing pool of permanently poor people that everybody else has ignored or denied our existence for the better part of 45 years.
Yeah, on that point, I just want to add something. You're absolutely right. And if anyone's ever been to any of our southern cities, I don't know where everybody that calls from, the fact that we tolerate tent cities in Los Angeles, in New Orleans, and basically everywhere that's where it's not freezing cold in the winter, there are massive tent cities on the fringes of our society. It's Dickensian. It is as bad as the Great Depression, and it's been that way for a long, long time, and it's tolerated. So you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's something we just kind of accept and turn a blind eye to, but there's poverty all around us. And it just doesn't have to be, which is the saddest thing about it.
Thanks for the great question, Jacqueline. We'll move on to Lily's question.
Hey, so my question, I just had a really quick question. It was, should you get elected, what policies would you advocate for that benefit youth?
Well, I want to eliminate student loan debt. I think if you look at, education, the way we look at education in this country, rather, is a private endeavor. You go to school to get a job to make your life better. That's the wrong way to look at it. And that's not the way our adversaries or our competitors in the world are looking at it. Education should be seen as something we invest in for the benefit of the entire community. If we give you the skills to become an engineer or an artist or a teacher, it dramatically benefits our society. So why are we giving young people a second mortgage or a third mortgage before they even start their life? It's wrong. That's something we have to resist. Beyond that, I would say that, obviously I'm for Medicare for all, which I think would help small business, and I think it would help people like yourself. And I think UBI. Think about how different life would be for most Americans if you were free to pursue your dreams without having to worry about the basic necessities. How much more entrepreneurial would you be? How much more creative would you be? So those are all policies that I think that I'll fight for to help the youth, not just the youth, all Americans. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Nate, we're going over a little bit here. Let us know if you're running out of time and we'll accommodate, but we do have one more question from Clayton.
Sure. After I take Clayton's question, can I thank you guys real quick? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Nate, let me thank you before you thank us. I just want to thank you for having the courage to stand up for your values. And, as I'm listening to you, prior to this, we were talking about values. And I've heard every value that we've showed come out of your mouth tonight. And I grew up in poverty too. So I want to thank you for standing up for those folks. My question is, assuming Biden wins, what do you see? Do you see possible paths to make any systemic changes, the kind of systemic changes we've been talking about do you have a vision for, any possible achievements after Biden as, versus a Trump win?
First of all, thank you for saying that. Like you saying you grew up in poverty, I already, like, just because people that grew up that way, I automatically feel a kinship for you and a brotherhood with you. And it's touching for you to say that. And I appreciate that my values reflect your values and that you can see that in what I'm saying, because that's really what I want to represent. I want to represent that we're in this together and we're fighting for the same things. And I appreciate you, Clayton. Listen, I met Joe Biden 2 years ago today. Actually, 2 years ago today, he came to NY27. He, out of nowhere, he wasn't running for office at the time. He called our team and he said, I want to come and spend a day with you. He was coming to speak at UB. I'm sure he was already considering running for office. I was like, yeah, I mean, sure, come. So he came. He gave me a checklist of things I could do, right? He said, I need to have a car. I need a driver. You need to be there at this time. You can't tell anybody where we're going. And we had to sign a release. And think about that. I'm this guy running this grassroots campaign, and out of nowhere, the former vice president said, I'm going to come visit you. And I didn't really know anything about Joe Biden. I knew he was the vice president. I knew he ran for office a million times, whatever. So Joe Biden, we went and picked him up at the airport. And my brother went because I didn't have money for a driver. So my little brother was the driver. So he picked him up at the airport. The guy comes off the airplane, public airplane, no entourage, gets in the car, spends the day with us. He is, okay, what can I say? I'll be blunt. He's a heck of a lot smarter than he looks. Or sometimes seems on TV. He's very smart. He's very down to earth. He and I spent the day arguing about a lot of stuff because he's got a different view of the world than I do. It's not a Trumpian view of the world. It's just a view of the world that's, I don't know, more conservative, for lack of a better term. But I will say this, and I say this with my full heart to everybody on the line. I got a pretty good view of the man without any filter, and he is a good man. And I mean that in the best sense of the term. He looked at other people like real people. He had empathy. I saw him cry, and it was sincere tears where there's no cameras around. There was no reason for him to fake for me and my little brother. He's just a good guy. He really was. And I think with such a terrible man in office, it gives me a lot of hope that a good guy's in office, a good man, and a man that I hope is willing to change on a few issues. Now, he's not going to change unless he's like everything. We need to keep the fight up and apply pressure. But what I saw in him in person was someone that is willing to listen and that has true empathy. And when you hear that rhetoric, I think it's more than just rhetoric. He really is somebody who cares. And I think that's pretty great considering where we are right now as a country. And it gives me some hope for the future of the country. And so if I win, I'm going to call him and say, you remember me from Western New York? How are we going to figure out ways to get all those people you visited me that day to get them health care? How are you going to help me do it, Joe? And I think at least you'll have the conversation. And I think if we continue to apply pressure, we can get there. And I promise you that's what I'll do.
Thanks for the great question, Clayton. We definitely had some people in the chat that wanted to talk a little bit more about Biden. So thanks for those comments. And we'd love to know how to get more involved, where to go, and however you want to finish off, Nate.
Well, first of all, again, thank you. Like having be on the call with all these intelligent people and these good people that have, that want a better country. I appreciate it. I'll say to you guys, I believe that we can turn the corner here. America does have an incredible ability to heal itself. And it's kind of been like this, right? And it's been getting better, there's no doubt. And we're in a downturn right now, obviously, but I'm hopeful that this will give us an opportunity to do some amazing things. On my election, I'm not just saying this as a candidate or a salesman. We can absolutely win. And I hope that during the course of the last 30 minutes, I convinced you that I'm someone you can support. Look at every candidate says this, and it's true for us especially. We haven't got $1 of national money. So even $10 makes a difference for our campaign. We're having a hard time finishing the commercials. And if you go to my Facebook page or my Twitter account, Nate_McMurray. You can see our commercials. I'm very proud of our commercials. We didn't put scary music into people's houses. We've done listen, I'm pretty aggressive on social media. I'm not going to lie, because I have to be to keep this thing going. But we also have run a very positive campaign. So anything you can do to help financially would help. And also, if you're willing to make texts from home, I mean, it's going to be all about getting out the vote. And if we can get out the vote up here, we're going to win. We don't have to go 20 miles in the reddest district in America. Again, I lost by this much twice. We got to go this much. And if we can get this much out, that just means a couple more percentage points of Democrats or independents, we're going to win. So if you can make phone calls from home, please do that as well. And if you can share our social media, no matter what, I'm not going away. I'm going to continue to be an active voice in this part of the country for the values I believe in. So if you can share our social media, I'd appreciate that too. But I think we can win. I'm hopeful for the next 9 days, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. And I thank you all for doing what you're doing as well.
Great. Hey, let's get the link in the chat, right? The link where we can support Nate.
Yeah.
Can we put that in the chat?
Yeah, we'll add that right now. And just for all of those listening in, it's votemcmurray.com. votemcmurray.com. And yeah, let's get this guy elected. You sound like a really authentic dude with a lot of great ideas that we can all fight for. And we hope to be working with you for a long time in the future.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Talk to you soon.
Have a nice one.
Thank you. All right,
And
I'm going to take us off of live. Thank you for everyone who watched us live.
Thanks, everyone. With that, we are switching to a hang. All right. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I've got to go pick up my fiance from the airport here in